إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله فإنه من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد ومن يعص الله ورسوله فلا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا. أما بعد فأوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله تعالى كما قال جل وعلا في كتابه المجيد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My brothers and sisters, after beginning with the praise of Allah, the Exalted, the Almighty, I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah alone. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last of his prophets and the seal of his messengers. قال الله تعالى هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. My brothers and sisters, we continue with our reflections on this beautiful hadith in the collections of Al-Bukhari and Muslim and elsewhere, where our mother, the mother of the believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, tells the stories of these 11 households to her husband, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And as we near the end of the stories, we have seen both good and bad. We have seen praise and criticism. We have seen qualities that we should acquire that would enhance our relationships at home with our children, our professional relationships at work, with our friends. We have seen others that have destroyed many a home and many a workplace and many a child. And that's, I think, part of the beauty of this hadith, the humanity and the real nature of these characteristics and these challenges throughout the ages, even though these actual stories happened well over 1,000 years ago. We come to two homes today, the 8th and the 9th, both of which are homes where the wives praise the household and the husband. And the 8th description is very short but profound. قالت الثامنة زوجي الريح ريح زرنب والمس مس أرنب. The 8th one mentions two things about her husband. She says, his scent is like a very sweet smelling plant. You know, if you go to the botanical gardens, or even if you plant like a mint plant at home, or if you like the smell of the jasmine flower or roses, when you're in that garden and you smell that scent, you want to just sit down and enjoy that atmosphere. And sometimes if you're walking along a trail and you spot that scent, right? You smell some mint leaf, or you smell, you know, the scent of a jasmine flower. You start to look around because you want to know, where did this scent come from? Similarly, there are people that give importance to their physical appearance and their scent and their presentation in front of people. And this is in a balance between two things. A balance between extravagance, where a person is primarily dressing for themselves, to draw attention to themselves, to show off, versus the other extreme, where a person thinks that it's from humility to appear disheveled, to have, holes in their clothes, or purposefully, have an ugly scent or not be, nice to be around. The humility of Islam is in the balance between the two. In fact, the Islamic manners of dress are primarily from a concern about the rights of others upon oneself. In other words, its objective is to be a person that is inviting, that is welcoming for others, not to draw attention to oneself per se. And there are many aspects of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that actually speak about this. Because I know many of us might say, this is nothing, this is a simple thing. But there are ahadith, there are narrations that speak just about this, nothing else. Among them, the narration of عن المقدام بن شريح عن أبيه قال سألت عائشة قلت بأي شيء كان يبدأ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل بيته. That Al-Miqdam ibn Shurayh narrates from his father, Shurayh, that he asked the mother of the believers, Aisha radiallahu anha, what was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ used to do when entering his home? قالت بالسواك. She said he used to begin by, brushing his teeth, if you will, with the siwak, by cleansing and beautifying the mouth. So you see, this is such a simple thing, and yet the Prophet ﷺ was so intent as he entered upon the people of his household that there not be a scent or an odor coming from the mouth, and that he always be clean and pure. And the Prophet ﷺ was also described in other narrations that he would be known by his unique scent. That when he would walk in a path of Al-Madinah, that people would know by the beauty of the scent in this path that the Prophet ﷺ had recently passed by. And from the elements of dunya that he described that have been beloved to him are al-misk. He used to love the scent, the smell of musk, and he used to be very concerned with using, perfumes and things like this that beautify one's appearance. So there are many ways that we apply this sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in our times. First, many of us have the wrong attitude about our appearance at home. We confuse being dressed casually with being dressed ugly, if you will, right? That there is a difference, that a person naturally is at their comfort in their home. They're not dressed like they're going to a wedding or going to a speech. This is natural with our husbands, with our wives, with our children. And yet a person can still be casual, but very refined and beautiful to keep the company with among the people of their household. And this should be from our concern, inshallah, to have appropriate appearance and to be concerned as the Prophet ﷺ was with cleanliness, with purity. This is not only a concern of the rights of people upon us, but indeed about the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ التَّوَّابِينَ وَيُحِبُّ الْمُتَطَهِّرِينَ. That Allah loves those that turn in tawbah, in repentance to Him often, and He loves those that are continually purifying themselves. And some scholars, they used to apply the spirit of this ayah in that some of our predecessors and righteous scholars would seek to perpetually be in a state of wudu. This is not obligatory in our deen. It's obligatory to have a state of wudu for salah and for particular activities. But some of the pious predecessors would want a higher level, so they would love that every time, at any time, they're in a state of tahara so they could enter a salah at any time. That if death were to come, and none of us knows when death would come, that they would die in a state of tahara. That some people do not only make wudu when they lack wudu for salah, but they love to actually make wudu before salah from that desire to be in these higher levels of purification. And so it's good, inshallah, to know what's required of us, and yet also know what these higher levels and what these hidden dimensions of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ were. So she says, زوجي الريح ريح زرنب والمس مس أرنب. That when you go to if you have in your yard, or if you have a hare or a rabbit at home, or if you go to a petting zoo and you just stroke the fur and the skin of a rabbit. This gives a description that cannot be translated. What she's saying is that the company of her husband is like the sweetness or the softness of touching a rabbit or a hare. And this profound description speaks about the characteristics of gentleness and the beauty of company and coexistence between the husband and the wife. And we should be cognizant that with our spouses especially, and with others in general, Our relationships exist at 4 levels. We have a spiritual connection with our spouses. We have an emotional connection with our spouses. We have an intellectual connection with our spouses. And we have a physical connection with our spouses. When one of these 4, spiritual, emotional, intellectual, or physical, is lacking, it cannot be made up for with just the other 3. The health of each of these connections, especially in marriage and to another degree in other relationships, is important for the health of the relationship, that the person coexist and have healthy relations in all of these dimensions. And you will not find one of these 4, except that there are multiple narrations from the Sunnah and perhaps multiple ayat that allude in many dimensions to the importance of these. And if you go back and review the prior households, you will see that many of the struggling households come back to a struggle in one or more of these connections. In fact, when you ask marriage counselors or imams or those that sit to reconcile between families, you will find that a deficiency in one of these 4 that some people might look down on is really the root of a lot of other problems that don't exist on their own. The root is a real disconnection in one of these 4. So you look at the Prophet ﷺ and how his wives, especially, had narrations about his night prayer, about his receiving the revelation of the Quran. So similarly, no man and one woman should go through their recitation of the Quran, through their salah, through their remembrance of Allah, without the home having some share of this worship. Some of our worship is done in the masjid, some of the worship is done in public, but our home should have some share of this, and that builds that spiritual connection, worshiping Allah together as a family. But also this emotional and this intellectual connection comes also from this gentleness of manner and goodness of character. You see the earlier households, remember Al-Ashannaq, the one whose mind is not connected to his heart, there's no emotional connection. Or the woman who said, "He never takes my hand that he may know what springs forth from my heart." So this man is the opposite. That you know when you feel that comfort that you can pour out your heart to a person, that you can be vulnerable, that you can be open with them. And this is not only important with our spouses, but especially with our children. That those parents that lack their children's trust when they are young are unable to guide them when they are teenagers and older. If that child cannot, even you look at the Prophet ﷺ, when an intense issue happens at home and a dish is broken by one of the mothers of the believers, the Prophet ﷺ does not overreact, does not scream, does not yell, but he recognizes that your mother has become jealous. And he corrects what's happened wrong, but corrects it in a way that doesn't break the trust, that doesn't break down the health of that household. Many of us, and unfortunately all of our cultures have positive aspects and have negative aspects. Many of our cultures have unhealthy aspects in this regard that are disconnected from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where the parents become only referees, become only right and wrong without regard to the manner. And my brothers and sisters, as you reflect on this statement, al-massu massu al-nabil, that having that company is like stroking a rabbit. Look at the Prophet ﷺ with the youth and the children of Al-Madinah. Look at that incident where the girls, the young girls of Al-Madinah are gathered around him and they proclaim their love for him. And the Prophet ﷺ is eager to receive them and says also, he proclaims his love for these girls of Al-Madinah. Look at Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, who transmits to us an important dhikr, a remembrance of Allah after the Prophet, after the Salah. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. And yet at the beginning, before he teaches him, he says, O Mu'adh, inni la uhibbuk. O Mu'adh, I love you. And then he says, I will teach you that, so do not leave after if any salah that you say this dua. So you see, even before teaching comes that love. So Mu'adh is naturally wanting to learn from the Prophet ﷺ, wanting to receive his guidance. Other companions were distinguished that they rode an animal behind the Prophet ﷺ, and years later recount this experience. Another companion comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and another man is passing in front of him, and he says, I love so-and-so. And the Prophet ﷺ asks him, أَأَعْلَمْتَ? Have you told him that you love him? So many of us have this love within our hearts, but we struggle because of expectations of culture, because of upbringing, because of our past. We struggle to express it. The Prophet ﷺ used to express this love in the most refined and perfect and dignified of manners. But he used to express it. And understand, my brothers and sisters, this is from the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ, that when you hear a story of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, or you hear a story of even younger companions, of Abdullah ibn Umar, or Anas ibn Malik, especially the young children that were teenagers or below when they interacted with the Prophet ﷺ in Medina. Ask yourself, when this interaction occurred, how old was the Prophet ﷺ? When Abdullah ibn Umar was 8 or 10 or 12, or Anas, how old, when these young girls of Al-Medina, how old was the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet emigrated to Al-Medina when he was 53 years old. And he died ﷺ when he was 63. Meaning that these incidents of dealing with children occurred when the Prophet ﷺ was in his mid to upper 50s or his low 60s in age. And this reminds us of a statement that is incredibly profound. It says that a generation gap is nothing more than a statement of your decision to separate yourself from those that are distant from you in age or in culture. That because we are older, because we're born or raised in a different country, yes, that connection might not happen naturally, but I can figure out, and I know it's hard, wallahi, I personally now dealing with the students in the school here, I thought I was hip and up to technology with Facebook and Twitter, but they have these new tools, I have no idea what they're talking about. So sometimes you have to go take a class and learn and become relatable. But when you have that relationship, then and only then are you truly able to teach, to guide. When they have that comfort that a person has with their own pet rabbit or with a sweet animal, outside. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this courage and this gentleness and this good character exemplified by this man and exemplified more by the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم آمين. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. My brothers and sisters, we're speaking about a short description in the 8th household where of this hadith, قالت الثامنة زوجي الريح ريح زرنب والمس مس أرنب. That my husband, his scent is like the scent of a sweet smelling plant, and being with him is like caressing a rabbit or a hare. And my brothers and sisters, to be honest, this is an uncomfortable topic. Her description almost sounds romantic. Others might say in our cultures that such descriptions are un-Islamic. And yet we have to correct our understandings with what is authentically attributed from our religion. So we should understand our values and take from our cultures, American or otherwise, what fits, but also understand where we make different decisions based on the guidance of Allah and His Messenger. So there is no doubt that when it comes to such descriptions, that there are limits to what is appropriately displayed in public. And a big challenge in Hollywood and elsewhere today is that you see the standards of society shifting. You look at the way people would be dressed at a beach or a swimming pool 50 years ago, not overseas, but right here in America. And they would look like they just landed from the moon in this same land. Because the standards of society about appropriate dress and everything else are shifting wildly. And they're shifting among men and women. So our religion attaches us to timeless values, where we protect that same dignity, that same honor, while expressing our also culture and our personalities. A dignified Muslim man or woman coming from Africa, dressed in African garb, looks different than a Western Muslim, looks different from one from Indonesia, looks different from Arabia, and that's fine. But without crossing these boundaries. But this hadith teaches us to be cautious of the opposite boundary. There's a story that is narrated in a collection of Al-Bukhari, أن أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قبل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الحسن بن علي وعنده الأقرع بن حابس التميمي جالسا. That the Prophet ﷺ once among the companions took his grandson Al-Hasan ibn Ali and kissed him. And seated there was Al-Aqra ibn Habis from the tribe of Tamim. فقال الأقرع إن لي عشرة من الولد ما قبلت منهم أحدا. Al-Aqra said, I have 10 children, I have never kissed one of them. So you see in this learning moment, Al-Aqra expressed sometimes what we think of as that masculine culture, or perhaps Arab culture, or mistakenly Islamic and Muslim culture. He said, I have 10 children, I've never kissed one of them. He was so shocked by seeing the Prophet ﷺ kiss Al-Hasan ibn Ali. فنظر إليه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم قال من لا يرحم لا يرحم. So the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and he said, the one who does not show mercy will not be shown himself mercy. So you see the Prophet ﷺ, this important dimension of our deen, of displaying in front of ourselves, in front of our families, in front of our children, what a healthy, decent expression of love and care and compassion is. No doubt this care looks different between a husband and a wife, then a father and a mother, then two friends, then an unrelated Muslim man and a Muslim woman. Between each is love and mercy and compassion. But the bounds for expression are different, and that is healthy, and that is normal. But what many of us fall into is the opposite, which puts our children in a challenging situation, where we are embarrassed to show that good, healthy Islamic love to our spouses in front of our children, where we are embarrassed to show that healthy love between brothers and sisters here in the masjid or outside, and to know we have those close bonds. But then what happens is that our children fall prey to lesser examples. The story of Romeo and Juliet. The story of love that is not that complete love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love of those who expressed beyond boundaries and did not accomplish what these great households accomplished. Understand that these homes, the home of the Prophet ﷺ, that we are invited to by listening to this hadith, the home of Aisha, the home of Khadija, the home of Salama, these are people that loved each other as a husband and wife and accomplished the pinnacle of accomplishment. Raising Ali ibn AbuTaleb and Fatima bint Mohamed in one household, being affiliated to Zayd ibn Haritha and his lineage, and accomplishing this peak of accomplishment. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our children from vice and from evil and from sin. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us knowledge of our religion. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to increase the bonds of love and brotherhood and sisterhood in our community and in our homes. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bring our children near to us and to bring together between every husband and wife. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم كل إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان، اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين، ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين، اللهم آمين آمين. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقيموا الصلاة.